Hello, everyone. Those of you who are on thus far, and welcome to Fairfax Cryobank's Using Donor Sperm for Home Insemination webinar. We are going to get started in a couple minutes. As many of you are joining, we're just going to give you all a few minutes to get settled in, and then we'll get started. Give everybody another minute and then we'll get going. I keep seeing the numbers growing. Okay. All right, I think we can get going. So just a heads up, the webinar is being recorded, and that link to the recording is going to be sent to all of our registered participants for today, and we're also going to post it on our blog and on social media. Okay, so as I said before, welcome to Fairfax Cryobank's webinar on using donor sperm for home insemination. Today, you are going to be hearing from me. I'm Michelle Adi. I'm the Lab Director and Director of Operations for Fairfax Cryobank. Then I'm going to give you some information about donor sperm, about ordering, and then I'm going to pass everything over to Kate Wisda, our wonderful nurse practitioner over in our Pacific Reproductive Services Clinic. And then Morgan Barker, our Senior Marketing Manager, is going to moderate questions. And we have the wonderful Doreen Duggan joining us. She is our Client Services Supervisor. And the three of us will be able to answer all of your many questions. So thank you, Doreen and Kate, for joining today. You guys can pop your cameras off and I will start chatting with the people. Okay, awesome. So we'll get started today. As I said, we are recording today, so this link will be sent out and shared with everyone. If you have questions as we're going along, please do submit them in the little questions section of the toolbar for the GoToWebinar. And we are going to moderate and have all of those questions answered at the end of the session today. Okay, so those of you who've joined us before know that I love to start by talking about what our goals for today are. Keeps us accountable, make sure we're all on the same page. So today, pretty simple. I'm going to talk to you to give you an overview of donor sperm options. Then I'm going to pass it on to Kate, and Kate is going to go through the process of home insemination for you. And then we are going to open things up and do a question and answer section. Before we jump into the content, just want to review some terminology. So again, everybody understands all of the acronyms that Kate and I are going to be throwing around. So we are going to be talking about ART, whether it is an ART procedure or an ART prep type. ART stands for Artificial or Assisted Reproductive Technology. That's the first one. The second one is IUI, which is intrauterine insemination. And that is the process when you go into your medical professional's office to have an insemination, they are going to use a catheter, pull up the sample. It's going to be prepped and ready for you. And they're going to use the catheter on a needleless syringe to insert into the vagina, go through the cervix and place the sample into the uterus. That's intrauterine insemination, IUI. That's relevant for both procedure and prep type. And then we have ICI, which is intracervical insemination, which is when the sample is placed directly on the cervix. And that is what you do in a home insemination, which is our last term. And that is just when you perform an ICI in the comfort of your own home. So those are some terms for today. One quick note, when you are working with Fairfax Cryobank, you actually have the benefit of 3 quality donor brands. Fairfax acquired Cryogenic Laboratories in the early 2000s. We acquired Pacific Reproductive Services in 2016. And so when you go to our donor search and you put in your criteria and you get your results, you may see that you have Fairfax brand, CLI brand, PRS brand. They are all covered by our assessment quality standard. They are all high quality, all the same, level of testing. And you get the benefit of some higher donor numbers because we have more variety from the 3 brands. So to get started, let's talk about how to choose your sperm donor. This is a different, very personal process for everybody, depending on your situation. If you are part of a couple that's dealing with male infertility, your process may be a little different from an individual who is ready to be a mom, who's just going for it and is picking a donor for herself, which may then be different from 2 women in a couple who are, going for it together and choosing a donor to build their family. So everybody's experience is a little different depending on your situation, but then it's also very personal. So I always recommend that regardless of your situation, when you have to use donor sperm, the best way to get started in choosing a donor is really to start by creating a list of characteristics that you value. And this could be anything from physical features, height, body type, hair color, eye color, skin tone, education. If you're somebody who highly values, the fact that you have a graduate degree, you would like a grad donor, you can use that. If you're somebody who is really talented with your hands and is creative, maybe you're more interested in a donor who has a carpentry certificate or something like that. You can use that as, characteristics that you're creating to sort of whittle down that list. You can look at our ethnic origin. If you or your partner, have a really strong connection to your ethnic heritage, cultural heritage, maybe you want to choose a donor from a similar background. Or maybe you are interested in only looking at donors who are willing to be known, so ID donors versus non-ID donors. So create that list, whether it's on paper or in your head, however you work, bullet journal, do something creative with it. You want to make it a joyful process for yourself. You can then go to our donor search, which I'm going to click on here just to briefly show you how the donor search works. You're going to take that list, and we've got well over 300 donors available for you to choose from. That to me is a really big pool to start looking through. I don't want to look through 300 donors. So basically what I would do is, let's say I'm only interested in ID donors. I'm interested in donors 5'8" to 5'11", and that's it. Let's say I'm just going to start there. And I click search. It looks 80. 80 might be manageable for some people. Personally, for me, still too many. So I'm going to go back to the search, and I'm going to go back and put in ID 5'8" to 5'11", and I'm going to say I want to see donors with auburn or red hair. I grew up on Anne of Green Gables, so I love red hair. So I'm going to put that in. Search. I have 4 exact matches. That to me, I'm happy. That makes me happy. It's less overwhelming. This way, I can go through and I can look at each of these guys and decide if they're the right fit for me. If I want to open the search back up, I can get rid of the hair color, for example. The other thing that's great here is once you've registered in the on the website, you can save your searches and you can go back to guys that you have viewed. What I will say is there is a lot of information on all of our donors. So let's just click on a donor, for example. You can get a nice little summary about the donor here. You get a nice view of his height, weight, eye color, all of that information, some basic info here. And then I can go over here and you're going to see there's stuff that's indicated as free for download. And those are products that you don't have to pay for. And then there are products that are a la carte. So I would recommend that you consider our unlimited access packages. This is really the most economical way for you to get the most information. So as I showed you, there are all these products that are really helpful in helping to choose your donor. Instead of having to purchase each thing for each donor that you're potentially interested in, which can obviously add up, you can consider one of our unlimited access packages, which allows you access to all of these different things for all the donors. So it's not donor by donor, this is for all the donors. And I will tell you, if you look at the math, the full access with club membership, which is $500, and I know that's an investment, it is worth the money because you get 2 free shipping fees, and shipping fees are anywhere from $280 to $320. So literally it pays for itself. And this way you get to choose all of these different tools that will help you to keep whittling that list down to something that's manageable and comfortable for you. I will give you just a little side note. One of the things that I've gotten in feedback from recipients is that the donor audio interview is really helpful in choosing a donor, in making a final decision. So if you've gotten your list down to, let's say, 3 or 4 guys and you can't make the decision, listen to the audio interview. It's an interview where the donors sit down with a member of the staff and they basically go through a list of questions. Hopefully it's conversational for you. You're learning about them, their childhood, their motivation for being a donor. You're learning about what their favorite book is and maybe what character is their favorite and why. What does that mean to them? You know, things like that. So you get a little bit of an insight into the donor's personality and you get to hear his voice. And I just hear over and over again that that's one of the things that people just really love and use to choose their donors. Okay, so now let's say you're good. You've got a donor, a couple donors in mind, you're ready to go. The next step is to place your order. Now, in order to do that, you need some information. We need to know the donor number. You need to know the number of vials you want to purchase and the preparation type. And I'm going to give you the detail about that on the next slide. You also need the shipping address information and when you'd like it to arrive, either at your clinic or at your home. Side note, if you're interested in having more than one child, if you want to ensure that your children are genetically related, one thing that you can do is purchase more vials than you need for your current insemination. So if you have the means and the ability to purchase 6 vials, if you did the Club Fairfax, if you purchase 5, you get a 6th free. You can do that and just ship out what you need for your current insemination. And then anything that you're storing with us that you end up not needing, you can work with client services, and you can sell them back to us for a partial refund. So that is a way to ensure that you'll be able to get inventory to have a 2nd or 3rd child using the same donor. We can't guarantee inventory for donors long-term, so that's the way to really do it. If you can't get to the point when you're ready to choose a donor and you just feel like you need some help, our client services staff is incredible. They're so helpful, and they've helped so many people navigate this process and choose donors. They can help, from anything from giving you a little bit of insight and advice on a donor to actually helping you to choose a donor by giving you a list of people that donors that meet your criteria. So that's also just a side note. If you need a little help, they're there for you. Okay, moving on. So I've mentioned we need to know the vial prep type. This is taken from a great infographic on our website that you can find under resources. And basically what you need to know is how are you going to use the vial? Once you know how you're going to use the vial, then you can choose the vial type that you need. And yes, it is dependent on what's available in inventory. If you're going to your medical professional and you're doing an in-office insemination, they need to utilize an IUI or intrauterine pre-washed vial. The reason this is important is that you can't insert seminal fluid into the uterus. There are hormones and proteins and things that will cause issues in the uterus because naturally, seminal fluid doesn't enter the uterus, only the sperm do through the cervix. So if you're having an IUI and there's IUI prep vials available, buy an IUI prep vial. 1 vial equals 1 insemination. If your donor only has IUI ART vials available, you would purchase 2 for 1 insemination. Now the ART vials, same great quality sperm, just a lower number of total motile sperm per vial. The reason the ART prep types exist is that it takes far fewer sperm to fertilize an egg when you're doing IVF, which is in vitro fertilization, or ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection. So those vials have a minimum of 6 million total motile cells. So you would only need one ART vial to do IVF or ICSI. But if you want to combine vials for an insemination, you would do 2 of those for an insemination. And again, the IUI ART are pre-washed, ready to go. ICI ART are not ready to go for an IUI. If your donor doesn't have IUI, if that's the process you're having, your clinic may be able to wash that vial for you. So you just want to verify with them verbally that they're able to receive an ICI unwashed vial, that they'll wash the vial for you, and then they can proceed with the IUI. Okay, so that's IUI. Today, what's important to talk about is ICI, intracervical insemination, which is what you would use for a home insemination. So again, one ICI, one vial, one insemination attempt. Both the IUI and the ICI vials are 10 million total motile cells. That's what you need for one insemination. That's a sufficient number of sperm that are going to be able to find their way through the uterus, up into the fallopian tube, follow those chemical signals that the egg is giving off, and get to that egg for the fertilization. So if your donor has ICI vials available, awesome. One ICI vial, one home insemination. If your donor only has IUI vials, doesn't matter. You can use an IUI vial for an at-home insemination. The only difference is it was already washed. You can use 2 ICI ART vials or 2 IUI ART vials. No additional prep is needed. You just use the vials for the home insemination. If there's any questions about this, I'm happy to answer it during the Q&A. And again, the infographic is available on our website as well for reference. So if you're ready and you are interested in home insemination, you need to complete a home delivery authorization form. And I would recommend that before you start the process and get deep into this and have your expectations set, talk to somebody in client services. And our number is up on the screen. Not every state is eligible to receive samples shipped to the home for home insemination. And the home delivery authorization has to be completed and signed off by a medical professional, because we just want to make sure that you are in your best health to be ready to do this process for pregnancy. If everything goes well, you get your home delivery authorization completed, place your order, the vials are going to ship. If you're shipping to your home, you're going to receive a shipping tank in a box. The shipping tanks are a little heavy, but not unwieldy, and it holds temperature of -150 degrees Celsius, which maintains the cryopreservation of the sample. Once you open the tank, you're starting to expose the sample in the tank to lower temperatures. So I would recommend you receive it, verify your information, and then you open your tank. So I did actually make a home insemination sperm unboxing video. I'm not going to show the whole video. I'm actually going to turn the sound off, but basically the video is an overview of what you're going to receive, the box, the tank, all of the paperwork. It goes through all of the detail of the paperwork. It's about 13 minutes, the video. And I show you how to prep everything, how to verify your information, verify the paperwork. And then I talk a little bit about the home insem process. I didn't want to show the whole video during the webinar because it's sort of redundant to what Kate's going to talk about as well. But this is very detailed in terms of 2 things. 1, the paperwork that you're receiving, and 2, how to handle the sample when it's received. And I'm showing the box, and hopefully you find it a helpful video. You can comment, ask us additional questions, and we'll try to get to them. So that's the home insem video. That's not a great screenshot, so we're going to flip quick. All right. So if you're interested, Morgan is going to link the home insem video in the comments, and we're also going to post on social and on our blog. So you'll be able to get to it there. So that's my part. That's all the information about the sperm donors. So now I'm going to transfer over to Kate, and she is going to share her screen and go through the home insem process for you. And then we'll come back to me, and I'll rejoin and we'll do the Q&A. So Kate, let me switch over to you. There we go. All right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kate, and I am a nurse practitioner. I work at a clinic that was recently purchased by Fairfax Cryobank. We're going to go through some really great slides about in-home insemination. We know that in-home insemination is also called ICI, as Michelle explained, ICI being intracervical insemination. So there's a lot to talk about. We'll talk about unboxing, and we'll even touch on how to predict ovulation. So knowing when to inseminate. Okay. Is home insemination right for you? Yes, if you're free of fertility issues, if you're comfortable with the idea of performing the procedure in your own home. I'd say that most people are. They prefer to do so in their bedroom or on their sofa. It's something that you can do on your own, and we'll talk about the details of that. You can also do it with a partner, whatever you're comfortable with. If it's discussed with, if you've discussed family building with a medical provider, we do recommend that you speak to your medical provider. If it's acceptable under the laws of your state, and if you're curious about that, you're welcome to call our client services to get a better understanding of in-home insemination and the laws in your state. Okay. Do I need to work with a medical provider? The short answer is yes. Fairfax Cryobank recommends that everyone beginning their family building journey speak with a medical professional. Now that's going to be your primary care physician. It can be your OB/GYN. It can also be a midwife. And you want to ensure that your overall health and wellness is good, just that you're able to get pregnant. If you have something like a thyroid disorder or endocrine like diabetes, it's a good idea to meet with your provider to set some goals. What do I want my sugars to be at? Where do I want my sugars to be at when I'm pregnant? What can I do to prevent any pregnancy complications going forward? Patients will ask me sometimes, should I get pregnant if I am diabetic? Absolutely. The idea is just to plan ahead, speak to your provider, and make sure you have a good game plan. Your provider will assess your health and lifestyle and make recommendations to prime your body for pregnancy. They may recommend fertility testing depending on your age and medical history. I would highly recommend fertility testing with your primary caregiver or your gynecologist if you are over the age of 35. It's good to just make sure everything's in order. That will be your egg reserve as well as your thyroid function. And it's nice to know where you're at and what procedure to start with if you're over the age of 35. It's best to ensure your readiness for pregnancy before investing in the home insemination process. So we know that honestly this is costly for a lot of couples and for a lot of individuals wanting to get pregnant, and so we want to make it worth your while. And speaking to your medical provider before you do that is a great idea. Why try home insemination? So yes, oftentimes couples are told to try it home for a few months or for a few cycles when they want to start a family. And then home insemination allows individuals and couples without a sperm providing partner to try it home before moving to in-office procedures. I will say for couples in particular, it is a really unique experience to have with your partner. It's a great bonding experience, and it's something that you two can do together. Not only tracking your cycles and finding out when you're fertile, but also going through the process together of picking a donor and then doing it in the comfort of your own home. So it's a really special experience. Getting started. So the number one problem that I see with ICI patients is that they don't know how to determine when they're ovulating. So we're going to go through 5 slides on how to do this. I really want to clarify some things and make it hopefully just a little bit easier for you. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to track your cycle. I would recommend getting a smartphone app. They are used as a good guideline. They're not black and white. They're not always right. They're not always going to tell you exactly when you're ovulating, but the smartphone, it can really give you a sense of when the beginning, middle, and end of your cycle are, and when to start testing with ovulation predictor kits. So just go on, whatever app store you have on your phone. I would suggest finding one that's free and downloading it and starting with the first day of your next cycle. So the first day of your cycle is the first day of your period, and we like to say it's the first day where you have a flow. So when you're using a pad or a tampon and you're actually getting your period. Most cycles last 28 to 30 days. That's the average that we see in most patients, but they can last 21 to 35 days and still be completely normal. So if you have a 22-day cycle and it's on point 22 to 25 days, that's absolutely fine. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is determine ovulation. We'd like you to purchase an ovulation predictor kit. We call them OPKs for short. You can get them at a drugstore. You can get it on Amazon. It's commercially available in most places. And we'll talk a little bit more about which OPK to get in a second. A positive OPK. What does a positive OPK mean? Well, OPKs are not actually detecting when you're ovulating. They're detecting when a hormone in your body called the luteinizing hormone, they're detecting when that luteinizing hormone surges. So if we look at our picture over here, this person's luteinizing hormone surged on day 11. No, they're not fertile on day 11. They're fertile on day 12. You'll see your little blue line here. So the LH surge occurs 12 to 24 hours before ovulation, which is great. It gives you a nice window to plan ahead. So we know that ovulation can occur 12 hours in women who are a little bit older, but typically we tend to see ovulation occur in about 24 hours. So if you're only planning on doing one ICI, I would aim for this 24-hour window. And then what is ovulation? Why do we care about ovulation? Ovulation is your true fertile period, and it only lasts 12 to 24 hours. Again, with the 12 to 24, if you're, again, only doing one insemination, in-home insemination, stick to the 24-hour rule. So it's your true fertile period. It lasts 12 to 24 hours. And with this person, we said that their LH surge was on cycle day 11. That's when they got their positive OPK. So they would have the happy face on this one. And cycle day 12 is when they would inseminate because they know they're ovulating. Ovulating is your true fertile period. Okay. So like I said, we're going to talk about which OPK to get. So when you're doing ICI or in-home insemination, you want to get the timing right. We know that our sperm is going to live about 24 hours inside the female body. So, and your ovulation is only going to last about 24 hours. So we want to get that timing perfect. Which OPK should you pick? Well, you're going to get the test with the 2 lines. So I will show you that in 1 second. We have an example, a picture of that. But right here, you notice this one has the digital happy face. I would recommend not getting the happy face. Sometimes they like to tell you, just like the apps, they like to tell you 4 or 5 days ahead of time that you're fertile. And you're not fertile. You're only fertile for 12 to 24 hours on this one day, right? This person's happens to be cycle day 12. The apps will also tell you 4 to 5 days before that you're fertile. And the reason they do that is because they are geared towards couples using fresh sperm or having heterosexual sex. So fresh sperm can live inside the body up to 5 days, where frozen sperm only lives for about 24 hours. So if someone were to inseminate or have sex with fresh sperm here, then it would make sense. It would still be alive in the body on ovulation day. Avoid the digital tests like the happy face, and avoid tests that say they're the most sensitive. You're actually going to get a slightly cheaper test. You want a test that detects your surge. You don't want to know days ahead of time that your LH is going up a little bit. You want to know the day that it just goes bonkers, goes through the roof. Getting started, how to test. So what you're going to do is you're going to get your LPK. You'll get it the night before, and then you'll set your alarm to test the second urine of the day. The first urine of the day, the first pee that you do, it's too concentrated. Often you'll notice it's a little bit of a darker color. We don't want to use that urine. So we suggest that you wake up 2.5 to 3 hours before your normal alarm, urinate, go back to sleep. Wake up again with your normal alarm and test your second urine. So to put it in short, wake up at 6 a.m., pee. So this is just an example. It depends on what your schedule is. So you wake up at 6 a.m., pee, flush it, go back to bed. You'll stumble back to bed. You don't have to do anything else, just fall asleep again. And then you'll wake up at 8:30 a.m., You'll pee on the test, and it will tell you whether or not you are having an LH surge. Now, LH surges can be different for different people, and this is why we want you to get the slightly lesser test, the one that has the 2 lines. So your LH can have a very sharp rise. It can go from 0 or 1 on cycle day 12 all the way up to this high number on cycle day 13. So it can be a quick rise, no line, and then suddenly a dark line, right? So maybe cycle day 12, there's nothing. Cycle day 13, you've got a nice dark line. It can also be a slow rise to LH. So maybe cycle day 10, you see a little something. Cycle day 11, you see a little something. Cycle day 12, oh, it's getting darker. And then cycle day 13, it's very dark. That's also a normal response. And that means that the OPK is working for you. So different people testing will get different patterns. But it's good to test ahead of time before you do your ICI, so you know your pattern and you know how the OPK is working for you. Okay, so this is the test with the 2 lines that I was talking about. We saw the one earlier with the happy face, the digital. We don't want that one. We want the 2 lines. It looks like a little litmus test. So if you have a negative OPK, you're only going to see the control line, or your test line will be very, very faint. Okay, so see how this is faint and this is a dark red. Your control line is always going to be there. Oh gosh, I forget what they call it. Your reference line is what they usually call it in the test. So it's your control line, your reference line, it's always there. If the control line is there, that means the test is good. You got a good test. If there's no control line, you got a busted test. You got to throw it away and buy a new test. So if you get a negative, there'll be no line or a faint line, and you'll test again tomorrow morning. A positive OPK. Okay, you've got your positive OPK. What are you going to see? You'll see a line that's as dark as the control line or the reference line, or you'll even see a line that's darker than the control line. So you see this nice burgundy. In fact, we often see a nice burgundy line in the commercial tests. If you see that, then you're going to inseminate 24 hours later. Why? Because you had your LH surge, and we know that in about 24 hours you'll be fertile. So you get to plan ahead. You get a whole 24 hours to plan ahead, and you can inseminate. So your fertility window. We're just kind of going through this with a different graphic so you really understand what's going on. You are most fertile for a 12 to 24-hour window, typically between cycle days 11 to 17 of the menstrual cycle. So I've had patients that have inseminated on cycle 21, cycle day 22, and they typically have longer cycles, maybe 35-day cycles. If someone has a shorter cycle, let's say 21 or 22, they might be inseminating around cycle day 9 or cycle day 10. So it really depends on you. And those ovulation predictor kits, if you practice them ahead of time, they will give you a sense of when you're going to have a positive OPK. We talked about that. OPKs don't work for everyone. If your OPK is not working for you, that's okay. I would recommend speaking to your medical provider and talking to them about what you're getting or what you're not getting on the OPKs. For patients who miss cycles, so maybe you get 5 cycles a year and the other 7 are missed, or let's say you get 2 cycles in a month, I would recommend just talking to your medical provider and having them do a workup to make sure that there isn't something like polycystic ovarian syndrome or something else going on. If your OPKs don't work for you, and let's say you have PCOS, you can absolutely get pregnant and you can do insemination. There's just other processes that we need to go through. So it doesn't mean that you're less fertile, it just means we need a different approach to find out when you're ovulating. Okay, you're ready to inseminate. What do you need to do for a home insemination? So number 1, this is the most important thing, is you're going to have a comfortable space where you feel safe. That can be your bed, that can be your sofa, it could be your backyard, whatever you want. We're going to give you a needleless syringe. And the unpacking video talks all about this. This needleless syringe is actually sterile. It'll come in a sterile container. You can open it up, take out your syringe. The sperm sample, that will come in your tank, and inside the tank it's in a little cane. Your sperm sample is probably about half this vial. So I always tell everyone, you didn't get gypped. You only need about a half a vial to get pregnant. Sperm is so tiny And we don't want any, we don't need anything extra in here. So it's got the right count, and it looks a little bit small, but it's just the right amount. The vial will come with some instructions, and then we recommend that you get some insulated gloves. Michelle has these on the unboxing video, and then some eye protection because there will be a puff. You're going to prepare the space and yourself. You can have soothing music, candles, anything that helps you relax. Ideally, you'll be reclining on your back with the pelvis tilted for about 2 hours. So we usually recommend that you lie on your back, and there is a really nice idea every 20 minutes if you flip to your stomach and then flip back to your back. We know that the sperm that's in the back of the vagina in front of the cervix, it'll wash over the cervix every time you flip over. So it's reintroducing that sperm to the cervix and to that little entryway in the cervix. There's a little hole in the cervix that leads to the uterus where that sperm needs to swim up to and then go to the fallopian tubes to get those eggs, right? That you just ovulated. Place yourself in a positive frame of mind. Focus on relaxation, meditate if that appeals to you, and breathe mindfully. Intracervical insemination. Okay, so this is a nursing trick. You're going to gather every single thing you need and place it in front of you on a solid surface. You're going to open up your needleless syringe, leaving it in the wrapper. You're going to remove the tank lid. You'll see a puff of vapor. Wearing gloves, you'll carefully remove the cane holding the vial. And with the instructions, you'll also have some paperwork that says the number of your vial. And I had our lab do a little mock-up of what the vial will look like. You'll just compare the number to the paperwork you have. Once all that's set, you'll wrap the vial in a cloth or a paper towel, and you'll dry off any condensation. It only takes about 15-20 minutes of this vial sitting on the counter, 15-20 minutes for it to thaw out. To make sure that it's thawed, you can invert it and see if it's still frozen. Okay? If you need 25 minutes, that's fine. So intracervical insemination. So the actual process of intracervical insemination is a pretty easy process. The person doing the insemination, self or partner, will wash their hands thoroughly, obviously. The person being inseminated will lay on their back with their hips elevated and knees bent. So we have this awesome graphic. You're just going to lay on your back, and then you'll have a pillow underneath your hips. You can have your legs straight if you want, but more comfortable is usually when the knees are bent. Put a cushion under the buttocks to tilt the pelvis upward. So the reason we do this is gravity. We don't want that sperm falling out. So tilting you in this way will allow the sperm to swim up to the cervix, go through the cervix and to the uterus. You're going to pick up and gently mix the sperm vial. We talked about inverting it. Don't shake it, just invert it carefully and allow the volume to settle to the bottom. So once you see that everything's settled, you'll open it up. You'll take your plunger. Another nursing trick is these little plungers on the needleless syringes, they get stuck. So it's a good idea when there's nothing in there to kind of wiggle it around so it's nice and smooth, which you can see. You draw it up. And then you'll inseminate with this. You or your partner will carefully draw up the sperm in the vial. Place the syringe into the vagina as far as it will go with the tip close to but not touching the cervix. So this is the cervix, this is the uterus, these are the fallopian tubes and the ovaries. This is the vaginal canal. So really it's very simple, and you don't actually need to see what you're doing. You're going to insert it. If you hit something, that's probably the cervix. Just pull back a little. Your syringe may go in about 2/3 of the way, and that's fine. It could go in all the way. It just depends on the length of the vaginal canal. So if you hit the cervix, pull back a little bit, and then you'll deposit the sperm. I would recommend doing it slowly, just to be nice to the sperm. Gently expel the sperm sample onto the cervix, remove the syringe, and relax. I get a lot of questions about whether or not you need lubricant to insert this. You absolutely don't. It's much smaller than a tampon. So if you can insert a tampon, you can do this. And you don't necessarily need someone to do this for you. You You could very easily do this yourself. Remain lying comfortably for about 30 minutes, but up to 2 hours. Shift your position from abdomen to back every 20 minutes. We talked about that. So when you're laying on your back, the sperm will gather here, and you flip over to your belly. It will wash the cervix and reintroduce the sperm to that little opening in the cervix. We call that an os, and it allows the sperm to swim into the uterus. Post-intracervical inseminations. So some individuals will use a soft cup placed on the cervix after the sperm is expelled. Here we have a great picture, again, of the vaginal canal and the cervix. This is actually a menstrual cup. If that's what you have at home, I would recommend using a menstrual cup. A soft cup is something that you can just kind of Google or look on Amazon, and it will come up. It looks like a menstrual cup, but it's a thinner, softer barrel down here. And it's a lot shorter. It goes about to here. It's not necessary, but some find it helpful. The idea is that you would keep the sperm at the cervix. So every time you're flipping over, it's much easier to reintroduce it to the cervix. Remaining reclined allows the sperm to swim through the cervix and into the uterus. We're just fighting gravity. Just make sure that you don't, that the sperm will fall out if you try to stand up right away, right? Some individuals choose to do multiple inseminations during the fertile window in one cycle. So we talked about that fertile window being 12 to 24 hours after you're OPK positive, or we can also say it's 12 to 24 hours after your LH surge. So some patients like to do one at 12 hours and one at 24 hours, and that's absolutely fine. You would need a vial for each time. We don't necessarily recommend that you do 2, but if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Speak to your medical provider about this option if you have questions. Okay, ICI considerations. So I get these 2 questions all the time, and so I just added it to the slideshow, and I thought you guys would like it. Nothing in the vagina before or after an ICI for up to 24 hours. So if you've done an intrauterine insemination for 24 hours, there's no swimming, there's no baths, there's no hot tubs, nothing goes in the vagina. If your provider has suggested that you and your partner have sex, I would recommend not using any lubricants. A lot of lubricants will kill the sperm. Condoms, a lot of condoms have spermicide on it. So spermicide, the whole role is to kill sperm. So double check that condom if you're using condoms. If you do decide to have sex, particularly penetrative sex with your partner, or if it's a male partner, make sure that you use something called pre-seed. Pre-seed, it was created to not kill the sperm. So pre-seed can be used without damaging that sperm. And then, of course, never use soap, water, or do any sort of douching in the vagina before, after, anytime, ever. It's no good. It's bad for your vaginal flora, and we want good vaginal flora so that that sperm is happy in the vaginal canal, wants to keep swimming and swim up to the uterus. Female orgasm. So this is a question I get a lot, and I get it a lot on the webinars because it's an uncomfortable question to ask, but there's a lot of anecdotal evidence out there. And in fact, the question is, should I have a female orgasm after an insemination? So what we have right now is a lot of theories. We don't have anything evidence-based. So I don't have a series of studies that show that scientifically it's a factual thing that you need to have a female orgasm after an ICI in order to increase your chances of fertility. It's just theory-based. And let me explain the theory. There's something called the suck-up method. So the idea is that the cervix, which has that little hole in it where the sperm swim through, the idea is that it actually moves during female orgasm, and it can encourage the sperm to go through the cervix into the uterus. And that's part of the cramping mechanism that happens with female orgasm. I would recommend, if you're going to do this, that you do clitoral stimulation. It is a lot safer if you put sperm in, to just leave that sperm alone and to just do outside stimulation. I also just maybe 2 weeks ago found out about this flat-fitting menstrual cup that is used for sex when you are on your menstruation. So it actually would go in, it would surround the cervix just like the soft cup that we talked about, and it would keep that sperm in there. And then if your doctor recommended that you have sex with your partner, you could use something like that. Female orgasm is thought to not have any worthwhile purpose towards fertility. That is that is what we are told in school. But there's a thought that female orgasm actually increases estrogen and it increases your cervical fluid. Now we all know that the sperm is going to swim in those cervical fluids up towards the uterus, and that is the way that those eggs are going to get fertilized. So increasing your cervical fluids is a good thing. And then we know that female orgasm causes an increase in pleasure hormones, which is to de-stress. What better way to get pregnant than when you're relaxed and comfortable in your own home and you've found ways to de-stress and relax. So in short, female orgasm, whether or not it increases your fertility, we don't know. But there are some good theories out there. So it's your choice if you'd like to do that. What is the cost of in-home insemination? So you have the cost of your donor sperm, the cost of shipping and handling. Fairfax Cryobank will provide written instructions for thawing the sperm sample and for the ICI, along with a needleless syringe. So you don't have to buy a needleless syringe. I would recommend actually not buying any fancy sort of syringe. We give life-saving medications through this traditional syringe, needleless syringe, and it saves lives every day. I don't think that there needs to be any changes to the design. If you notice that there's a little bit of sperm left in here, or even in this part, right here, the very tip, you can pull back, get some air into the needleless syringe, and then push air into the vagina. You can have air in the vagina, and that's absolutely fine. It will push that little bit of sperm through, and then you haven't wasted anything. So again, just pull back, get a little tiny bit of air, push it through. Success rates. If you have no fertility issues or health concerns, it can be up to a 10% success rate per cycle. Per cycle would be per try, right? So you only ovulate once per cycle, you're only fertile once per cycle. So it's about a 10% success rate per cycle. It can take several insemination attempts to achieve pregnancy, we know this. If you are not pregnant after several home attempts, it is best to speak with your medical provider about having a fertility assessment. So you may try 3 times and go to your doctor and say, I think I should have a fertility assessment. I'm doing ICIs and they're not working. Your medical professional may say, that's a great idea, let's do that. They may look at you and go, you're crazy, you don't have any fertility issues, but it's worth talking to your provider about and seeing exactly where you are and if you should continue trying with ICI or if you need to go up to IUI, which is intrauterine insemination, or if you need to go all the way up to IVF. Okay. This is our website. So like I said, I work through a clinic that was recently acquired by Fairfax Cryobank. We're called Pacific Reproductive Services. Our clinic is located at 65 North Madison Avenue in sunny Pasadena, California. If you're in the Pasadena, Los Angeles area, we would love to have you. Please give us a call, check out our website. We have patients that do come from us from Northern California, patients from as far away as San Diego. So just give us a call. We would love to work with you. All right, so now onto some Q&A, and I'm going to switch over to Michelle.
Great job, Kate. Thank you. Okay, and we are also joined by Doreen. There she is. All right, Morgan, are you on with us?
Hi, yeah, we have some great questions coming into the panel already. If people want to submit their own questions, they can do that, and we'll just come through them as much as we can. There's a bunch coming in already. Doreen, this one's for you. It's about home pickup, or not home pickup, excuse me, office pickup. You know, we have someone here who's based in Houston and wants to pick up locally.
That's fantastic. I think the best way to use our pickup service for all of our locations, especially, well, all of our inventory is located in Fairfax, Virginia, or majority is. So if you're picking up in Houston, the best way to utilize that is to purchase more than 1 vial and then you would pay for shipping from our Fairfax, Virginia location to the Houston location. And you'd be able to coordinate with our lab staff there once it's arrived to pick up your vials. So this saves you from paying the shipping fee over and over again. You'd pay one shipping fee to get it from our Virginia location to the Houston one.
Great. We also have a couple people who are joining us from Canada and are wondering about how this process works for home inseminate if they're located there.
So we don't ship directly to Canada. You would be working with your distributors, Can-Am Cryo, ReaperMed, and there's another one.
Canada Cryobank.
Thank you, Canada Cryobank, where they would be able to help you coordinate to see if that's something that's available in your area.
Great. Can wash sperm be used instead of an ICI vial for ICI at-home insemination, or is the extra fluid in the ICI sperm needed?
So there's not extra fluid in any of them. So basically an IUI vial has already had seminal fluid washed out, and it's basically replaced with a wash media and a freeze media. Your volume is the same. You're going to be getting 0.5 ml of sample regardless of if it's ICI or IUI. And about 0.5 ml is what's recommended for an insemination. Some clinics will even not use any volume over that. Some will go a little bit higher, but typically it's about 0.5 ml. You can use an IUI or 2 IUI ART vials for an at-home insemination. It's fine. The benefit of using the ICI vial is that it does have that seminal fluid, which is a little bit more viscous or sticky than the wash media is. But you know, you always have the option of using the flat soft cup or disc to keep the sample right up there by the cervix.
Could you please review what you mentioned about the home insemination authorization?
Doreen, that's you.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Sorry, for some reason my mic's not working the best today, guys. Could you please review the part about the home insem authorization?
Sure. So client services, our team is able to help you find out what consent form you're going to need. Most of our consent forms do need to be sent to a licensed medical professional to authorize delivery to a home address for home insemination. Depending on where you're located, you might be able to authorize it yourself. But by calling us and letting us know what city and state you're located in, we're going to be able to advise you. And if you're sending it to a physician, a licensed medical professional, who doesn't need to be a fertility doctor, it just needs to be a licensed medical professional, maybe a nurse practitioner, who can assist you with that. But we'll need to have their professional email address or fax number to send that off directly to them.
Morgan, before you jump in with the next question, I just wanted to highlight, because some people do have to jump off. We're coming up on about 7 minutes to 3. We're going to keep going with the questions, but I do want to highlight that we have a promo code for all of the attendees, and registered emails are going to get this as well. It's Home Insem Webinar 2021, and that's going to save you $149 on that full unlimited access through the 1st of August. So it's a really good deal. So you're actually making money, right? Like maybe not, because you're still buying the sperm, but it's a good deal. So again, it's Home Insem Webinar 2021, and that will get you $149 off the full unlimited access. So thank you, you know, for attending. As a thank you for attending, we wanted to offer the promo code. Okay, Morgan, sorry.
Great. Can you get pregnant on 1 vial of ART ICI, or would you have to use 2 vials?
I mean, Kate, you can speak to this, but you can get pregnant with 1. It is less likely because you are dealing with about half the amount of sperm, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, we would not recommend using 1 ICI ART. We would recommend using 2. Studies have shown, and this is evidence-based practice, studies have shown that you need 2 because that would be a more appropriate number.
Yeah, most of the literature, it says that about 10 million total motile sperm is what you want to have for an insemination.
Here's a question. It says, how long does it take for the sperm to meet the egg. If there is only a 24-hour window of a viable sperm, should I inseminate the day before when I get the surge?
So the question is, should you, what was the last part?
Should I inseminate the day before when I get the surge?
No, so what happens is that you are going to ovulate for 24 hours. So you're only fertile for 24 hours, which is fine because the sperm only lives for 24 hours. Those two windows pair up perfectly. So there's no reason to inseminate earlier. The textbooks technically say that once you have your LH surge, you're going to ovulate 12 to 24 hours later. So some people like to get 2 in case they fall into that 12 window. Most people don't. Most people fall into the 24 window. So once you get your LH surge, you're going to ovulate, or you'll be fertile 24 hours later. And then if that sperm lives for 24 hours, you inseminate right on time, and you've got that perfect window. They match up, they pair up perfectly.
Is there any downside to performing 2 inseminations for ICI, one at 12 hours and one at 24?
Any downside to doing 12 and 24?
Yep.
No, if you're not fertile, let's say you're fertile 24 hours after your LH surge, but you decide to inseminate at 12 hours, you technically would have that 12-hour overlap. So no, I mean, there's 12 hours where potentially you're not ovulating, potentially you're not fertile, but there's an added 12 hours where you are fertile. So not necessarily, it's just extra padding, I guess.
Is there any disadvantage to using IUI vials for ICI? I've seen some conflicting information about seminal fluid actually increasing success.
Yeah, it's just what I mentioned earlier that if you use the ICI vial, that seminal fluid is tackier. It's more viscous, stickier, so it's less likely to run down, whereas the wash media that is in the IUI vial is much more liquid. So, you know, I almost would say if you're going to use the IUI vial, go for the soft cup too. Give yourself that, you know, that extra barrier so that the sperm stay right up by the cervix. But you can use the IUI vials. It's not a problem. You're still getting the 10 million motile sperm. It's just more, I think it's probably more important to stay in the right position with your hips tilted up. And the flipping, the flipping I think is brilliant. I love the idea of just like, you know, plus, I mean, if you lay in one position for too long, it's not terribly comfortable, right? So you want to, being able to move back and forth is both more for comfort, but it also does, as Kate and I both said, it does allow the sample to wash over the cervix and expose the sperm to the opening in the cervix.
Yeah, we do have some questions about the positioning. When rotating to your stomach after insemination, how long do you stay on your stomach until you turn back over?
I would stick with your comfort level. If you're rotating every 20 minutes, then your stomach for 20 minutes, your back for 20 minutes, your stomach for 20 minutes. If you're on your stomach and it's super uncomfortable, then maybe give it 5 minutes and switch back. It's not an exact science, but the idea is that you are in fact reintroducing that sperm to the cervix. So I would stick with your comfort level, and you know, it depends on where you are too. If laying on your stomach is, so what we want to do is we want to fight gravity. So if you're on your stomach, make sure that your pelvis is tilted so that that sperm cannot run out. That's really important. Okay.
We have someone who is worried about defrosting too long. Any tips?
Say it again.
Worried about defrosting too long?
Oh, yeah, no, you'll be fine. I mean, I wouldn't leave it, you know, I wouldn't leave it for a couple hours. Definitely not. The sample really should be thawed between 15 and 20 minutes. As Kate said, if it's 25 minutes, that's fine. Once it's liquid, you're fine. Once it's thawed, you really do need to do the insemination. I wouldn't leave it for several hours. I wouldn't leave it for a half a day. What's happening is, you know, sperm are living cells. So there's metabolism is happening, right? They're swimming around in that vial, and you want them to use that energy in your body. You don't want to expend that energy in the vial. So, you know, they're using up the metabolites, they're using up the nutrient in that vial. And if it sits too long, they're going to start dying. And once it's introduced into the vaginal canal, you know, Kate mentioned the positive vaginal flora, there's hormones, there's cervical liquid, or not liquid, what's the word you said? Cervical mucus, sorry, liquid.
Liquid?
Yeah, it is a liquid, all in there. So, you know, that's also supporting the health and metabolism of the sperm. So don't let them sit too long. You want to, if it's thawed, go right ahead. It's not going to be cold. You're not going to feel cold. It's room temperature at that point, and you should do it as soon as possible.
How can you tell if you have the syringe too far into the uterus?
Oh, I can answer that. So your syringe is not going to go into the uterus. It's only going to go into the vaginal canal. Michelle, would we be able to go back to okay. So it's only going to go into the vaginal canal. The end of the vaginal canal is the cervix. After the cervix is the uterus. So it's only going to go into the vaginal canal. If you hit something, it's likely that you hit the cervix. Probably won't really hurt or anything. Just pull back a little. So I actually looked this up the other day. A syringe is the average length, I think it's about 10 centimeters, which is the average length of the vaginal canal. So I know that they sell syringes out there that are a little bit longer for intracervical insemination. It doesn't make any sense because the average length is about 10 centimeters. The syringe we give you is about 10 centimeters. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So yeah, so again, so if you go in too far, you'll only be able to tell if you hit something. Pull back a little bit. Okay.
If purchasing more than one vial for home insemination, do you get 2 tanks? What is the process for that?
You are able to have more than 1 tank when shipping. It depends on if you need to ship everything at once or not. But we have at request sent 2 shipments and 2 different tanks, sometimes to arrive on the same day or sometimes to arrive on different days. So it would be, you would be paying another shipping fee because our shipping fees are per shipment.
We're getting some questions about how long it takes to ship things out, and if you have any tips about when to order things.
So we have 2 kinds of shipping. We have overnight shipping or 2 business day shipping. To a residence, overnight is $340, and to a residence, 2-day shipping is $280. It's a little bit less to ship to a clinic, about $20 less. But they arrive 1 to 2 business days later, depending on if you pick the overnight or the 2-day shipping. And the window we give you is for arrival between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. And we do need someone there to sign for that package. So you do need to plan to be there to accept your package, or someone over the age of 18 too. Things that I tell people to keep in mind, we only ship and have it arrive Monday through Friday. So if you're having a weekend insemination, if that's what it's looking like, you're going to want to have your package arrive on a Friday or before that.
Yeah, and just to add, one of the questions that we've gotten is, you know, why is shipping so expensive? Because it is. This is not an inexpensive process. But part of the reason that shipping is expensive is you have to recognize we are trying to keep that sample cryopreserved. Because once it starts to thaw, once it reaches minus 135 or warmer degrees Celsius, the cells start to metabolize there, and you don't want that to happen. So these samples are being shipped in what's called a liquid nitrogen dewar or a shipping tank, and those are charged with liquid nitrogen, and they're vapor tanks so that they're maintaining temperatures colder than minus 150 degrees Celsius. So that automatically, it's hazardous, you know, it's cold, it's really cold, it's shipped as, you know, FedEx handles it in a certain way. It's in a shipping box. It's very safe if you follow the instructions, but it is also a little bit heavier. It's not like shipping a small container. You're not just paying for the weight of the vial. You're paying for the tank as well. So it is expensive, but it's an investment in keeping your sample safe.
A related question to that, Michelle, is how long can sperm stay frozen in the tank?
I sort of love and hate this question because as a scientist, I can't really give you an answer. But as a sperm bank person, I can tell you anecdotally, hypothetically, forever. It could stay frozen forever. When something is cryopreserved, it is brought down to a temperature that basically, literally, it's what's called quiescent. Nothing is happening. That cell is frozen in time. So hypothetically, we can have sperm frozen indefinitely. And when you thaw it, as long as the temperature has not been compromised through the entire time it's been frozen, it's fine. It's the same, we see the same post-thaw survival 24 hours after freezing and 24 years after freezing. And the reason we can say hypothetically forever is that if the conditions are maintained, nothing changes. That cell is frozen in time. And we know through some of our work with, specifically with clients who are freezing their sperm for their own use in the future, we actually have a cancer patient from one of our sites who froze sperm as a minor and used the sperm 29 years later to have a child. And it worked. It was great, which is amazing. And so, you know, we know how to maintain those samples and keep them safe. So as a scientist, you never say anything with 100% accuracy. You can't say anything with 100%, but very likely you can keep it indefinitely.
But the tanks we ship in, though, only last either 7 days or 14 days, too.
Thank you,
So, so if we're
That's right.
shipping out in the tank, the standard tanks are 7 days, and you can upgrade that to a 2-week tank for having it at your home. Just to keep that in mind. Those won't keep forever because they do need to be recharged.
Yeah. When it's in liquid nitrogen, forever. When it's in a shipper tank, 7 or 14 days.
Yes.
And what is the process for returning the tank?
So we send ground labels for you to send the tank back to us, and that is if the tank is empty. So you have shipped a vial to your clinic or to your home, use that vial, and you don't need that tank to hold the vials anymore. There is a red label. You just stick it on the outside of your box and bring that to a FedEx location or have FedEx pick it up from your home, and it'll be sent back to us by ground shipping. However, if there is still a vial in there, like you missed your cycle or you shipped 4 vials and you used 2 and you want to send that back to us, you do need to contact client services so that we can expedite that shipping and make sure we receive it back to us frozen. We don't want to receive it thawed. If it's ground shipping, it may come back thawed because it takes a lot longer to come back.
Yeah. And as everybody, I think, is aware at this point, all of our shipping companies, FedEx, USPS, all of them, they're taxed. You know, the pandemic has changed a lot of things in terms of the supply chain and shipping. And so it is taking longer for us to get things returned to us. So if you are returning vials, I completely agree, contact client services immediately, and you want to get that turned around really quickly.
Great. Doreen, someone wants to know how much is each vial?
So it depends on a variety of factors, and that includes the donor itself, the preparation type, the availability of that donor, and whether that donor has received expanded genetic panel testing or not. The big range is anywhere from, I think, $750-ish to $1,155. And that's just for the vial. That doesn't include shipping or storage fees. So that's our big range. But if you want to know a specific price and it's not on the website, you can call client services to ask what the prices are for a specific donor.
Great. Shifting gears here a little bit, Kate, this one's for you. What is the best brand and type of OPK test?
Yes. So we always get this question. So my recommendations are not to get the digital. Don't get the ones with the blinky happy faces. I think almost all of them have the digital, have the happy faces. I'm not a big fan of the one that costs like $200 or $300 and you use an app on your phone. That's a bit much. And then I would make sure that you get the one with the 2 lines. So it looks like a little litmus test. It looks like there's paper in there. It kind of looks just like an old school pregnancy test. Those are your best ones. That's going to tell you when you have a surge. You don't want to know days ahead of time when your LH just starts inching up. That's not relevant to you. You want to get that 24-hour period. So you can get the store brand. So if you're going to, say, Target or CVS, you can look for the Target brand or CVS brand. I would recommend doing something like that. If you see on the box that it says the most sensitive LH rise ever, don't get that one. And you'll actually save a little bit of money too. So if you're looking at price range, aim on the lower end. Those tend to just give you the surge as opposed to those few days before.
is there any potential negative to using a specialized rounded end syringe for ICI?
No, I don't think there's a negative other than maybe cost. I know that they can run about $80, and then we can give you this one for free. And it's great. I would highly recommend it. And like I said earlier, if there is any sperm stuck in the very tip of it, which I think is maybe hard for you guys to see, this little tip, and then there's part of the barrel right here, just pull back, get a little bit of air, and then push it through, and that's fine. If it doesn't go through, get more air, and then push that through again. You can absolutely have air in the vagina, okay?
And those syringes are blunt edge. There's nothing sharp. It's not going to hurt you if you hit the cervix or anything like that. I mean, in having sex, you know, your hand or implement, whatever, penetrative sex, may hit the cervix. It's not a problem. So I don't think you need any special implements to do an InSem.
Right, and it's not a sterile procedure, not by any means. So you don't need more than just a syringe. And ours happened to be sterile, which is lovely. You technically don't even need a sterile syringe. You just need a clean syringe.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else wants to know how you feel about the Mosey baby.
I don't know what that is.
I don't want to. So Mosey is a brand, and I don't particularly want to give my opinions about a brand, but I think we did talk about some really important ideas today. The syringe really doesn't need to be rounded at the end. Air can be inserted into the vagina, and then the length of the syringe is more than enough to reach the cervix or get close to the cervix. And then when we talk about hitting the cervix and then pulling back a little bit, imagine if you were trying to deposit something into your hand. You wouldn't press the syringe against your hand and then deposit. You'd pull it back a little bit and then deposit. And that's all we mean. It's an easier process to drop it into the vaginal canal rather than to be pushing against the cervix. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend any brands of syringe. I think the one that we give is sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you're comfortable with is what you should use. I know that there are some implements. There are, I don't know if it's a vibrator, but at least it's a dildo that has a syringe sort of inserted into it. There are a couple of different brands of those. If that works for you, you know, you could use that. Whatever is most comfortable for you. It's a very personal process. You're starting your family. Do whatever feels right and is safe.
Another question here for Kate. Is cervical egg white mucus a sign of ovulation or a sign of the LH surge? If OPK is positive, but there is no egg white mucus, does that mean ovulation did not occur?
This one's tricky. So OPKs can be positive and you can still not ovulate. So this is the faulty part of OPKs. And this is why sometimes OPKs don't work for us. So maybe the mucus isn't in line with the positive OPK. Mucus has a way of kind of sticking in the back of the vagina and it doesn't necessarily come out. You can always use your finger and try to check. When I do my intrauterine inseminations, I usually see the mucus stuck in the cervix. So you wouldn't necessarily see that on your panties. So I can't say definitively for each person whether or not the mucus is going to line up with the LH surge. Ideally, we'd want that, but that may not be your situation. If you're really confused about this, I would recommend testing 2 or 3 months, getting an understanding of the OPKs, and then assuming you have that understanding, assuming you can figure out how it works for you, then inseminating. If you try it for 2 or 3 months and they just don't work for you, that's okay. There's a lot of people they don't work for. Maybe, like I said earlier, like maybe something like PCOS, or maybe your thyroid is off a little bit. You might want to talk to your doc and say, hey, how come these aren't working for me? Can we do a workup and make sure that I'm healthy? Do you think maybe a different process of getting pregnant would be helpful, such as IUI or IVF? So it's really good to have that dialogue with your provider. And like we recommended earlier, speaking to your medical provider and talking to them about if you're healthy enough to get pregnant, and what would be the best option for you, I think it's really good idea. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that specific question, but yeah, definitely talk to your medical provider if you keep trying and trying and it's not working. It's nothing, it might not be anything wrong with you. It's just worth looking into.
Kate, if somebody doesn't have the ability to use an OPK because it's not working for them or whatever, how would you know if they're ovulating? How would you test your patient?
Yeah, so I would test my patients through sonograms. So they come in and we do transvaginal sonograms. I look to make sure that everything is in order. So not only am I looking for these follicles, I'm also looking for the endometrium. There's a lot of signs in the GYN tract that you're about to ovulate. And then what I prefer to do is to use an injection of a medication called Ovidrel, which allows the woman to ovulate, especially if the OPKs are not working. So in a sense, we control that situation. And the Ovidrel that we give is a one-time injection, very tiny needle, and we know that the patient will come back in about 36 hours to inseminate, and it just encourages the body to do what it's naturally already wanting to do.
Thanks, Kate. I just wanted people to know that there is an option if the OPKs don't work.
Yes, there's so many options, so many ways to get pregnant. It's just a matter of investigating and talking to your provider and saying, what's the best for me?
We are getting some questions. There seems to be some confusion about what's the best practice with 2 vials. Is it best to do both of them in the same time frame? Or
no, I wouldn't do them in the same time frame. You're going to have a higher count than you need unless you're using ART vials. The ART vials are half a vial. They're about 6 million. If you're using a regular ICI vial, you don't necessarily have to do it in the same go. The idea that we were suggesting that 2 might be beneficial at 12 and 24 hours if you're a little confused on when your ovulation is happening, so that you make sure that you've got that time down. Because the textbooks say you ovulate 12 to 24 hours after your LH surge, so there could be that small window. Most people operate on a 24-hour window, and that's a pretty safe window to bet. That makes sense?
if you're going to use a soft cup or a disc after ICI, how long should you leave it in for?
Oh, yeah, they all have recommendations for how long they can be left in. If you have a diaphragm, I don't know who has a diaphragm anymore, but if you have a diaphragm, there's recommendations on that. There's cervical caps, all kinds of stuff. They'll all come with a pamphlet letting you know how long to keep it in. I would just keep it at that recommended. If it says to leave it in, you can't leave it in for longer than 8 hours, then don't leave it in for longer than 8 hours. But you're going to be fertile for about 24 hours. So if it says 8 to 24 hours, leave it in for 24 hours, whatever it says on the box. And I would not, I wouldn't push those boundaries. I would not leave it in for longer than it says. Sometimes there can cause irritation in the vagina if it's left in longer, and you don't want to do that. That can cause infection, yada yada. So just look at the instructions.
Another question we just got from someone else. What if you have a tilted cervix? Is there anything that you would have to do differently?
I love this question. Everybody has a tilted cervix. Everyone's cervix goes one direction or another. Some are really tilted and some are really tilted up. And it also depends on what's in your bladder at the time, whether it's full or empty or somewhere in the middle. So there's nothing wrong with your cervix. Medical providers like to tell patients that their cervix is tilted when they're having trouble getting a hold of it with the speculum. So nothing wrong with your cervix. If it's tilted, it will still respond very well to the soft cup or the menstrual cup. It kind of gravitates towards that cervix, and it will cup around it, whether the cervix is pointing downward, upward, to the side, whatever. They work just fine for tilted cervixes, crooked cervixes, big ones, little ones, they all work out. So don't worry about that at all.
The next question, Kate, why should we wake up 3 hours early, pee, and then go back to sleep? Wake up and then test that pee. Can't we just wake up like normal, go pee, and then test your second pee of the day?
Yes, okay. So the first urine of the day is too concentrated. So your LH hormone, which is the luteinizing hormone, doesn't really matter the name, but your LH hormone is always in the body. So I always have this handy for my patients. It's always in the body. It's just kind of sitting there and it's at a really low level. Let's say the level is 1. But when you have your surge, it goes boom, through the roof. If you have really concentrated urine, you might get a higher level of LH than you really have in the blood or have in the body at that time. So we know your second urine, less concentrated, it'll get a more accurate reading. You don't really have to do it if you don't want to, but it allows for more accuracy. I have patients that maybe they wake up at 8 a.m., they go to work, and then they test their urine at 10:30, 11 o'clock. If that's a better timeline for you, that's fine. Some people work the night shift and they have to kind of flip things around. That's okay. Just do what works for you. And I would, again, recommend not doing that first urine, doing the second urine.
Someone wants to know if a woman wants to do home insemination, will she still have to do the shots like with the IVF procedure?
Yeah, home insemination usually doesn't require any sort of shots. If you are doing injections like IVF injections, you're probably doing it with a medical provider, and they would want you to do an in-office procedure. So likely it won't involve medication. I've heard of doctors offering fertility meds to patients who are trying to get pregnant, maybe having timed sex. I don't see why it would be any different for ICI. If your doctor wants to do that, that's fine, and they'll go through that process with you, but you don't need medications necessarily for ICI. But again, check with your doc before you even start, and you'll know where you're at.
We're going to do about 5 more minutes of questions, and then anything we don't get to, we'll answer in a blog post.
This is the last one for Kate here. How long does the LH search last? How do you know when to start counting the 12 to 24 hours?
Yeah, when you get your LH surge in the morning and you're using your second urine of the day, whether that's 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock, we're just going to go 24 hours based on that. We want to get that timing right, but we're never going to get it 100% right. We do the best that we can, but it's never 100%. So you might be off by a couple hours. But yeah, so if you're testing at 8 a.m., then you probably want to inseminate the next day at 8 a.m. If you test positive at 10 a.m., then you can inseminate the next day at 10 a.m. The worst that you could be off is by a few hours.
Great. Thanks, Kate. Michelle, we have one for you next. Do you test and exclude sperm donations only for HPV type 16 and 18, or do you exclude all high-risk HPV in sperm or all HPV positive sperm?
So HPV is actually not a required test. So sperm banks are overseen by the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and there are specific regulations that apply, and they have specific lists of tests that we have to do, infectious disease testing. HPV is not included in that required testing. So Fairfax actually uses our internal molecular and infectious disease testing lab to do HPV 16 and 18 screening. We're only looking at those 2 specifically because they are known causative factors in cervical cancers. We are not just doing a general HPV screen.
Doreen, I've got 2 questions for you. We're kind of wrapping up here. Is there a limit to the amount of vials you can purchase?
No, there's no limit as long as we have enough vials for what you're looking for and you have enough funds to purchase those. We'll be able to assist you with however many you want to purchase.
Yeah, and we do offer long-term storage. So if you know you want to have 2 or 3 children, you're welcome to purchase ahead. A lot of couples like to do that so that they know they'll have full siblings down the line.
And just to add on to that, we do offer bulk storage. What's the word I'm looking for? Promotions, I guess. So if you purchase 6 vials at one time, you do get a year of free storage. If you purchase 8 or more, you do get 2 years of free storage. That would save you around $395 for 1 year or $670 for 2 years of storage. So you do save some money if you purchase a bunch at once. But again, it's up to what you need.
Morgan, can I just go back to the HPV question for a minute? Sure. I wanted to clarify because I said that we don't test for HPV generally. but we do screen for it. So there's a difference. So every donor is having physical examinations with a medical provider that's contracted by the cryobank, and they are looking for physical evidence of any STDs, including HPV. So it is screened for, it is not tested for by all sperm banks. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks. All right, last question of the webinar today. This one's for Doreen, and it says, I was put on a waiting list for a donor, and now it shows I'm an X on all vials. Why is that? Am I able to know what number I am on the wait list?
So it's a really great question. That's something I'm actually working with our genetic counselor team right now to make sure that we have our donors pretty up to date, make sure that they're reflecting accurately as active or inactive on our website. You can call us to see exactly what's going on with your donor. We'd love to kind of look into that more and tell you what, if they are still active or not. Sometimes donors stop participating in our program and we don't expect any other vials, and they do still have wait lists. You could potentially get vials back from that if another client sells them back to us through our buyback program, if the donor reactivates. But every donor has a different status, so we can definitely check into that. We don't, however, have any numbers on the wait list because people are waiting for different preparation types. So, there's nobody who's a number 1, nobody who's a number 10. When we have vials that we're able to offer you, we're going to be able to reach out to you to let you know. But please give us a call if you have questions about your specific waitlist position or donor.
Both Doreen and I have talked about the buyback program, and I do just want to clarify that only vials that never leave our facilities can be bought back, and that's because of quality control. We want to make sure that the vials have always been maintained at the proper temperature and handled properly. And if it's shipped off site, we have no idea what's happening with that vial. Whereas if it's kept on site and stored with us, we have 24/7 monitoring of temperatures and liquid nitrogen levels that we can check and ensure that we do check and ensure that the tanks are at the correct temperature and everything's being handled properly. So just to clarify, if you store with us, you could participate in the buyback, and that does include any of our locations. So as Doreen mentioned, you could potentially purchase, let's say, 4 vials and ship here to our Philly location, pick them up, one by one as you do your inseminations. If you end up pregnant and don't want any other children and you have 2 vials to sell back, even though it had shipped from Fairfax to Philly, it's still in our hands. You can still return that. So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, are we finished, Morgan?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. I just want to say thank you again to all of our attendees. It's always great to do these webinars and to hear from all of you and be able to answer your questions directly. And I also just want to say thank you to Kate for her experience and knowledge and for sharing all of that with us. And Doreen, thank you so much. You're a font of knowledge for all these questions. And Morgan, thank you for facilitating. Remember, we have the Home Insem webinar 2021, which saves $149 on the full unlimited access package through the 1st of August. And I hope this was helpful for everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.